Welcome to part 1 of Genesis, chapters 1 through 25, the summary. Here are the 6 things you need to know about the first chapter in the Bible. 1. God creates light. He separated the light from the darkness, and the earth was without form and void. 2. God separates the waters from the sky. He separates the waters with a firmament, in which he calls heaven. 3. God creates the seas, the dry land, and vegetation. God gathers the waters and calls them seas, and then brings forth the dry land and calls it earth. He then makes grass, herbs, and fruit that bring forth seeds. 4. God creates the sun, moon, and stars. He gave us these to govern day, night, and to also mark the seasons for days, months, and years. 5. God creates the birds and the fish. He created every living fish of the sea and every living bird of the sky to be fruitful and multiply. 6. God creates all the animals and man. He created every living animal in the land, and for them to be fruitful and multiply. He then created mankind in his image. He needed man to take care of the earth and to commune with him. God saw all he created to be very good. These are the 5 things you need to know about the second chapter in the Bible. 1. God rests on the 7th day. This day is designated for holy use and rest. 2. God makes the Garden of Eden. In the midst of the garden are 2 trees, the tree of life, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. From the garden are 4 rivers, the Pishon, the Gahan, the Tigris, and the Euphrates River. 3. God puts Adam in the Garden of Eden. God needs Adam to tend the garden. God also asks him not to eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, for he shall surely die. 4. God says man should not be alone. Adam looks for a comparable helper amongst the animals, but couldn't find one. So God puts Adam into a deep sleep, removes a rib, and makes a woman. 5. God symbolically illustrates the gift of marriage. Marriage is a public act of promising themselves to one another, taking responsibility for each other's welfare, and becoming one flesh in a sexual union. They were both naked and not ashamed. Here are the 6 things you need to know about Genesis chapter 3. Number 1. Eve eats from the tree of knowledge. A serpent convinced Eve to eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Eve shares that fruit with Adam. Number 2. Adam and Eve feel guilty. God searches for man in the garden. Adam and Eve are aware of their nakedness and attempt to hide from God as they are ashamed. Number 3. God judges man and the serpent. The serpent has to be hostile against man forever. The woman has to experience painful childbirth, and the man was to farm in fertile land and not bear its fruits. Number 4. Man obtains the knowledge of good and evil. Number 5. God casts out man from the garden. Number 6. God protects the tree of life and the garden. God places cherubim at the edge of the garden and a flaming sword to protect the tree of life. Here's Genesis chapter 4, the Cain and Abel story. Eve gives birth to Cain and Abel. Cain was a farmer and Abel was a shepherd. One day, Cain and Abel bring offerings to the Lord. The Lord accepts Abel's offering, but rejects Cain's. He gives him a chance to redo it. Instead, Cain gets angry and decides to kill Abel out of jealousy. The Lord punishes Cain. He punishes him by making the land on which he farms no longer fruitful to him, and he marks him so that his vindicator may receive his punishment 7-fold. 5 generations later, Cain's descendant, Lamech, also murders a man. Lamech self-proclaims that whoever shall kill him shall receive Cain's punishment only 77-fold. This goes to show how much sin was brought into the world by Cain and his descendants upon generations. Later, Adam and Eve have another child named Seth. He is the appointed seed of the family. This seed was supposed to be appointed to Abel. Later, Seth has a son named Enosh, and his descendants begin to call upon the Lord and is one of the first generations to call back upon the Lord since Cain. Let's dive into Genesis chapter 5, the descendants of Adam. Family trees are very important in the Bible, as it outlines the storytelling and proves that Jesus was born in the line of Abraham. So let's go down the family tree. Adam has Seth at 130 years old and dies at 930 years old. Seth has Enosh at 105 years old and dies at 912 years old. Enosh has Canaan. Canaan has Mahalalel. Mahalalel has Jared. Jared has Enoch. Enoch has Methuselah at 65 years old and never dies. We'll revisit this. Methuselah has Lamech. Lamech has Noah. Noah has Shem, Ham, and Japheth at about 500 years old. And it stops here to prepare us for the next chapter in the Bible. So let's revisit Enoch for just a second. So why doesn't he die? The story says that God takes Enoch at the age of 365 years old, and he outlives everyone, for he has never known death. Interesting. I think you should read a little bit deeper into the life of Enoch. Welcome to Genesis chapter 6, where it explains the wickedness of man and God's judgment. Time passed, and mankind was populating. Their hearts became more and more wicked. Man chose to live for themselves rather than to follow God. God felt immense sorrow, noticing how corrupt and violent the earth was. God decides he wants to destroy both man and beast of the earth. But God takes notice of Noah, since he walked in God's ways. God talks to Noah and tells him that he will flood the earth and destroy all living flesh. God then reveals to Noah the plans to build an ark. God promises Noah that his family, along with 2 of every living thing, will be loaded onto the ark. So Noah got to work and started building the ark. Welcome to Genesis chapter 7, the Great Flood. After the ark was finished, God told Noah to go into the ark, for after 7 days he will cause it to rain for 40 days and 40 nights, flooding the earth. Pairs of every animal joined Noah and his family on the ark. It's estimated that almost 45,000 animals could fit on the ark. After 7 days, God gathered all the animals onto the ark and shut the door. On that same day, it began to flood. The waters increased and lifted the ark high above the surface of the earth, about 22.5 feet higher than the tallest mountain. All the flesh of the land, both humans and animals, were destroyed from the earth. Only Noah and those who were with them remained alive. The waters prevailed on the earth for 150 days. Welcome to Genesis chapter 8, Noah's deliverance. After 150 days, God remembered Noah and caused a great wind to pass over the earth. The fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven were closed, and the waters started to recede. About a month later, the ark rested on the mountains of Ararat. 3 months later, the tops of the mountains became visible. Noah first sends out a raven, which kept going back and forth until the waters had dried up from the earth. Noah then sends out a dove to see if the waters had receded to the face of the earth, but the dove found no resting place and returned to the ark. A week later, Noah sends the dove out, only this time it returns with an olive branch in its mouth. At this point, Noah knew the waters had receded the earth. Another week had passed and Noah sent out the dove again, only it did not return to him. About a week later, Noah saw the waters were dried up from the earth. 2 more months passed and the earth was completely dried. God spoke to Noah and told them to leave the ark and roam the earth. Noah and the animals spent 1 year and 10 days in the ark during the flood. God made a promise to his creations that he would never destroy the earth like this again. He gave us seasons as a reminder of this promise. Welcome to Genesis chapter 9, God's promise to Noah. God blesses Noah and tells them to be fruitful and multiply. God tells them that they may eat of all moving things and green herbs of the planet. He also tells them not to commit murder, for there will be heavy consequences. God establishes a covenant with Noah with 3 things. 1. Never again will a flood do such destruction. 2. As long as the earth remains, seasons will always come as expected. 3. A rainbow will be a visible sign that God will keep this promise. Time passed and Noah became a farmer. He got drunk off his vineyard and passed out naked in his tent. His youngest son, Ham, discovered his father and mocked him towards his brothers. Shem and Japheth picked up a garment, walked backwards into the tent, and covered their father up without ever seeing him naked. Noah woke up, heard what happened, cursed Ham, and blessed Shem and Japheth. Noah lived 350 years after the flood and died at 950 years old. Welcome to Genesis chapter 10, Descendants of Noah. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. These are the nations that came from them. Under Shem came the Hebrews, Chaldeans, Assyrians, Persians, and Syrians. Under Ham came the Canaanites, Egyptians, Philistines, Hittites, and Amorites. Under Japheth came the Greeks, Thracians, and Scythians. Ham's descendants settled in Canaan, Egypt, and the rest of Africa. Japheth's descendants settled for the most part in Europe and Asia Minor. Shem's descendants settled in Mesha as you go towards Safar, which is modern-day Turkey and Yemen. One person to note is a man named Nimrod, which came from Ham. He was a mighty warrior and a great hunter. Some consider him to be the founder of the great godless Babylonian Empire. This is important to note for the next chapter. Welcome to Genesis chapter 11, the Tower of Babel. At this time, the whole earth had one language. Some people of the earth wanted to make a tower that reached the heavens to prove to themselves that they can do anything without God. The Lord didn't like this idea, so he came down and gave the people multiple languages, which then confused them. These people scattered amongst the earth, and then the tower ceased to be built. Near the same region, one of Shem's descendants was a man named Terah. Terah was a father to Abraham and a grandfather to Lot. Abraham is a very important figure in the Bible as he shares the bloodline with Jesus and serves as the father of Israel. In this time, Abraham's original name was Abram. Abram took a wife named Sarai. Terah and his family went to go to the land of Canaan from the Ur of the Chaldeans, but died halfway through the journey in the town of Haran. This is where the story of Abram begins. Welcome to Genesis chapter 12, God's promise to Abram. The Ur of the Chaldeans was a wicked place, and God called Abram to the land of Canaan, where he would make a great nation from him. At the age of 75, Abram left Haran with his family to the land of Canaan. The Lord appeared to Abram when he got there, and told him that this is the promised land to where he will make a great nation. Famine struck the land, and Abram and his family moved to Egypt. When they got there, Abram was scared that the Egyptians would kill him and take his wife Sarai for themselves because she was a very beautiful woman. Abram told Sarai to lie to them and tell them that she was his sister instead. Indeed, the princes took Sarai to Pharaoh, and he treated Abram well. The Lord began to plague Pharaoh's house because Sarai was Abram's wife, not his sister. When Pharaoh found out, he sent them away with all their things. Welcome to Genesis chapter 13, Abram and Lot. When Abram went away from Egypt with his family, they arrived back at the land of Canaan. However, the land was not able to support both Lot and Abram. They both had too many possessions. Abram asked Lot to look around and choose the land that he wanted, and Abram would go the opposite way. Lot looked to the plains of Jordan, where there were great pastures and available water, and he chose this land. The land Lot chose was close to many cities of wickedness, who sinned against the Lord, but this is what he wanted. Afterwards, they split up, and God spoke to Abram, telling him to look all around him, for this is the land that he will be given to his descendants. The Lord then tells him that he will make his descendants as plenty as the dust of the earth. Abram settles in the trees of Hebron. Welcome to Genesis chapter 14, Lot's captivity and rescue. There were many kings in those days. King Chedorlaomer and 3 of his fellow kings in the area declared war over 5 other kings in the region. Amongst those 5 kings were the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah. The 5 kings lost the war to King Chedorlaomer and had to serve him for 12 years. In the 13th year, they rebelled against him. The next year, King Chedorlaomer went to war with 6 other nations, and the 5 kings saw their chance to strike back against King Chedorlaomer. Things were not going well for the rebellion, so the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah took all their people and things of the city and fled 200 miles north. Abram got the news that Lot had been captured from the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah and taken away. So Abram created an army and followed the kings north to defeat them. After Abram's victory, he brought back all the goods of the people, including Lot, to Salem. Here awaited a righteous king named Melchizedek. They celebrated his victory and gave a tithe of all the goods to King Melchizedek. Afterwards, Abram sent the king of Sodom away with the rest of his goods, for Abram wanted nothing from him. Welcome to Genesis chapter 15, God's promise to Abram. Abram was fearful that he wouldn't have any kids to pass his inheritance to. So the Lord spoke to him, telling him that he would have his own children and that his descendants would be as plentiful as the stars. But Abram asked God to show him a sign that this would come true. So God asked Abram to produce an offering of several animals and to cut them in half and place them opposite of each other. When sunset came, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and the Lord revealed his plan to him. God says that Abram's descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and they will be slaves to it for 400 years. But then God will come down and judge the land that they served, and he will make it theirs from Egypt to the river Euphrates. Then a burning torch passed between the carcasses in the dark of the night. Welcome to Genesis chapter 16, Hagar and Ishmael. 10 years later, after God's promise to Abram to have a child, Sarai, Abram's wife, had an idea. Now Sarai was barren and couldn't have children of her own. How was God supposed to give Abram a kid with his wife Sarai? Sarai told Abram to sleep with her maidservant Hagar and have a child with her. Maybe that is what God wants. So Abram slept with Hagar and she became pregnant. Then Sarai became angry and she despised Hagar. Abram told Sarai to do whatever she pleased with Hagar since she is her servant. Sarai dealt harshly to her, and Hagar ran away. An angel came down to visit Hagar and asked her what happened, and reassured her that she will have this child, and he will be a great nation against all nations in his presence. Hagar returned back to Abram and bore him a son named Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old. Welcome to Genesis chapter 17, the sign of the covenant. 13 years later, God appeared to Abram to reiterate the promise that had been given to him. The promise to make his descendants exceedingly fruitful, plentiful, and that they will have the promised land of Canaan forever. God also changed Abram's name to Abraham, which means father of many. But Abraham had to do something for God and keep his end of the bargain. God told Abraham that him and all his male descendants shall be circumcised to show a sign that you belong to God's people. God also told Abraham that he should call his wife Sarah, she would be a mother of many. Abraham laughed at God because he was 99 years old. How were they supposed to have a baby? God reassured him that this time next year, Sarah will have a boy named Isaac. God left Abraham, and Abraham immediately went, circumcised himself, and all the men of his house. Welcome to Genesis chapter 18, Sodom and Gomorrah. One day, Abraham was in his tent in the middle of the day when the Lord appeared to him under a tree in front of the tent. The Lord appeared with 3 men standing near to him. Abraham rushed out to greet them and asked that they stay and rest long enough to enjoy some food. They agreed, and Abraham ran back into Sarah and told her to prepare some food for their guests outside. Abraham brought the food out to them, and when they asked where Sarah was standing in the tent eavesdropping on their conversation. Now the men told Abraham that Sarah will bear a son, and Sarah laughed out loud, drawing attention to herself. The Lord asked Abraham what was so funny. Sarah couldn't believe him, for she was old and past childbearing years. The Lord reassured Abraham that he will return to them, and she will bear a son. Then the men rose up and started heading towards Sodom, for they had heard of the wickedness of the city and had to verify it. The Lord revealed a plan to Abraham, saying he would destroy the city because of its sin against him. Abraham begged him not to destroy it if there were 50 righteous people there. The Lord agreed, but then Abraham bartered with the Lord all the way down to 10 righteous people living there. If 10 righteous people lived there, then the Lord would not destroy it. Then they left Abraham behind as they headed towards Sodom. Welcome to Genesis chapter 19, Sodom's depravity. Lot was sitting at the gates of Sodom when he saw 2 angels approaching the city. Lot insisted they stay with him overnight because it was not safe in the city. When the men of the city heard that Lot had guests staying with him, they went to his house and started heckling Lot. The men wanted to have sexual experiences with his guests, but Lot went outside and protected his house. He even offered up his 2 daughters to the men outside, but they desired the 2 angels. The angels snatched Lot from outside and brought him back to safety. The angels told Lot to gather his family and leave, for the Lord is going to destroy the city. Morning dawned, Lot, his wife, his 2 daughters left the city, and the angels told him not to look back at the destruction. Lot's wife looked back and instantly turned to a pillar of salt. Lot and his 2 daughters fled to the mountains. His daughters took it upon themselves to give Lot a son for his inheritance. So they got him drunk, they both slept with him, and they each had a son by their father. Their sons' names were Moab and Ben-Ami. Welcome to Genesis chapter 20, Abraham and Abimelech. Abraham and his family moved to Gerar, where King Abimelech owned the land. Once again, Abraham told the king that Sarah was his sister in fear for his life, and the king took Sarah for himself. But God appeared to Abimelech in a dream and told him that if he touched her, that he will surely die, for Sarah is Abraham's wife. Abimelech rose up the next morning and returned Sarah to Abraham, asking why he had done this to him. Abraham was afraid for his life and was worried that the city did not fear God. So Abimelech gave him livestock, servants, money, and land. He also asked him to pray for him, that he and his female servants to be healed, and that they may have their own kids. Abraham prayed for them and lived in the land of Gerar. Welcome to Genesis chapter 21, the birth of Isaac. The Lord visited Sarah, and she did bear a son named Isaac. Abraham threw a party the day Isaac became old enough to be weaned from Sarah. Sarah noticed Ishmael making fun of Isaac, and she got angry. Sarah made Abraham kick Hagar and Ishmael out of their family. Abraham was displeased, but God reassured him that Ishmael would be a great nation. Hagar and Ishmael wandered in the wilderness until they ran out of water. Hagar left her son for dead and cried out to the Lord. The Lord told Hagar to return to him, for he will be a great nation. Time passed, and King Abimelech came to Abraham. He asked Abraham to treat his descendants kindly, for he knows the power of God is strong with him. Abraham agreed. Then one of Abraham's wells became seized from King Abimelech's servants. Abraham rebuked the king, and the king said he knew nothing about it, so Abraham decided to give the king some livestock as a witness of their promise to each other. Abraham lived many days in the land of the Philistines. Welcome to Genesis chapter 22, Isaac's near death. One day God told Abraham to bring Isaac to the mountains and to sacrifice Isaac to him. So Abraham, Isaac, and 2 of his men traveled 60 miles north to Mount Moriah. When they got there, Abraham told his men to hang back while he and Isaac go up to the top and worship the Lord. Isaac became suspicious when he saw the wood for an offering, but no lamb. When they got there, Abraham tied Isaac up, placed him on the altar, raised a knife to slay him, when all of a sudden an angel of the Lord told Abraham to stop. The angel told Abraham that he had passed the test the Lord has given him. The Lord knows that Abraham fears God and that he will obey him no matter what the cost. Because of this, the Lord knew he could trust Abraham enough to multiply his descendants. Just then a ram appeared, so Abraham untied Isaac, sacrificed the ram to the Lord, and went back home to Beersheba. Welcome to Genesis chapter 23, Sarah's death. Sarah died at 120 years old in the town of Hebron. Abraham was a stranger in the land, so he asked the prince of the land if he could buy some and bury his wife here. The prince of the land offered to give Abraham a field outside of the city with a cave on it to bury his wife. Abraham insisted on paying him for the land, and so he did. It was a custom of the day to bargain for land, but Abraham gave him full price for it. Abraham then took his wife to the cave of Machpelah in the land he purchased and buried his wife. Welcome to Genesis chapter 24, Isaac's bride. Abraham tasked his lead servant Eliezer to fetch a wife for his son Isaac. Abraham told him to return to the land of his brother and take one of his family for Isaac's wife. On the way there, Eliezer prayed to the Lord for a sign that the woman who was to become Isaac's wife has a good heart. So it happened that a woman appeared and fulfilled the sign he was looking for. Not only was the sign fulfilled, but she was also the daughter of Abraham's brother. The woman's name was Rebekah. Her brother Laban came out and greeted Eliezer and asked him to stay with them. When Eliezer was there, he told him that he was Abraham's servant and that he was sent to fetch Rebekah as a wife for Isaac. Eliezer insisted that they must return back to Isaac so she can be his wife. Rebekah's family knew it was the work of the Lord and sent Rebekah home with Eliezer. Isaac was out in the field meditating when he saw them approaching on camels. Rebekah saw Isaac, placed down her veil, greeted him, and became his wife. Welcome to Genesis chapter 25, the death of Abraham. Abraham was 175 years old when he died. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him with his late wife Sarah in the cave of Machpelah. Afterwards, Ishmael headed far east with his 12 sons. Isaac was 40 years old when he met Rebekah. Rebekah was barren and couldn't have kids. Isaac begged the Lord to make her fruitful so they could have kids. 20 years later, they had twins, and the Lord told Rebekah that the older one will serve the younger. Their sons' names were Esau, the oldest, and Jacob, the youngest. Time passed, Esau was a hunter, and Jacob was a man amongst the house. One day, Esau came home from a hunt, and Jacob was cooking. Esau begged Jacob to feed him, but Jacob told him to sell him his birthright, and he will. Esau dramatically gave away his birthright to Jacob for some food.